All right, well, I think we will get started. So my name is Nicole Leggett. I'm joining you from the Office for Prevention of Family and Domestic Violence in the Department of Communities. Interestingly, I actually know everyone who's on the call, so it feels a bit weird to introduce myself that way, but this is a recorded presentation, so it will be made available on Tenders WA for anybody who is reviewing the request for tender. So perhaps if I can just start by acknowledging that I'm joining you today from Boorloo on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And give you a little bit of context around what you can expect from this presentation, which is that I will run through a standard set of slides. Simon will provide a little bit of information towards the end of presentation about about Tenders WA and the process of actually submitting for this request for tender. The presentation is being recorded, as I indicated. It will be saved and provided on Tenders WA, which means that it will be accessible to other people that are looking at the request, and it means that they have fair access to all the information that is available. So there'll be opportunity at the end for questions and answers, and those questions and answers will be part of that recording that's captured and made available to people. So I might just check with Simon from a process point of view. Is there anything else, Simon, that I should cover at the top of the presentation?
No, I think that's all fine. I think I've checked the speech, the PowerPoint, all good to go.
That's great.
Yep.
So I'm going to move through a series of slides. It's not too long and exhaustive. I suppose the main thing is to give opportunities for clarification. So if you've got any questions, then please feel free to post them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll pause and provide opportunity for questions at the end, which is really, I guess, the main purpose of this briefing. So just move my slides on. So I guess as a starting point, I just wanted to offer a little bit of context about how we've gotten to this place to be seeking a consultant for this project. So this is one of a number of projects that has directly come out of the Family and Domestic Violence Task Force, which was convened between September of last year and March of this year. One of the products of the task force is a family and domestic violence system reform plan, which is about improving the way that all of our service responses, including in government, non-government, Aboriginal community controlled organisations, are supported to respond to family and domestic violence. And I suppose it's recognising that although specialist services are critical, the contacts that victim survivors have at every point in that service system, even in mainstream services, in community-based services, they're just as important and influential as well. So the system reform plan is organised around 4 main areas, being risk assessment, risk management, information sharing, and workforce development. In the risk assessment area, there are 4 actions. 2 of them relate to setting up frameworks and practice guidance for risk assessment work. And one of those projects is this one that I'm here to talk to you about today. So I'll just check what I've got on my next slide. So what we are seeking in relation to this request for tender is an Aboriginal consultant, Aboriginal community controlled organisation or Aboriginal-led business to develop a dedicated, culturally appropriate family violence risk assessment tool, including practice guidance for use in Western Australia with Aboriginal people. So we're wanting a very specific and targeted piece of work that helps build practice and capability around practice, around particularly supporting Aboriginal women and children, but more broadly, Aboriginal people who are experiencing family and domestic violence. If you don't mind, I'm just going to roll through my slides because I think I've missed one out. Okay, so I'm just going to offer you a little bit of extra context. And my apologies, I thought I had it on a slide and I don't. So in Western Australia at the moment, we have a common risk assessment and risk management framework. It was released in 2011 and was updated in 2015. The other action, which is in the risk assessment domain of the system reform plan, which is also a request that is currently out for tender, is redevelopment of the common risk assessment and risk management framework that we already have. And that framework document, currently in the way that it is now, sets a standard of minimum practice around identifying family and domestic violence and assessing, managing and monitoring risk. So in a separate request that's currently live on Tenders WA, we are seeking someone to redevelop that practice framework for all of Western Australia, for all people experiencing family and domestic violence in Western Australia. The point of difference is that we understand and recognise that the overrepresentation of Aboriginal people experiencing family and domestic violence and the very unique experience and how culture can be a very strong protective factor in that space, but also and equally that there are unique risks and vulnerabilities that need to be taken into consideration when assessments of risk are being made. And that's why these things are being managed as separate projects. So this piece of work is intended to occur in parallel to redevelopment of the mainstream framework, if I can put it that way. But we expect that there would be some level of collaboration. It doesn't mean that they need to be the same, but I think that they need to at least be on the journey together so that we understand what those points of commonality are and what those points of difference are, because that will be really important when we come to the implementation. So what I've got on this slide is the deliverables that are from the request document. And before I go through those, I will pause and take the question from Alison.
Thanks, Nicole. Just wanted to ask, there's 150,000 for the Aboriginal one and 200,000 for the other one. Why was that? Why is that different?
So, Alison, it's mainly because the scope of the other one is a bit broader, because it will take in risk management practice as well as risk assessment practice, whereas this one is more squarely focused at this stage on the assessment piece. So it wasn't considered to be as wide-ranging in the scope of work, but still recognising it's going to take a considerable body of work to deliver. So that's why the differential in price is between 150 and 200.
Okay, so this is just the assessment tool, not the management aspect of it. Okay,
that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the deliverables that we're expecting from this project are on your screen now. But before I speak to those deliverables, I'll just provide a summary to the activities, which are also written in the request document. And ready with me. So I'm just checking you can still see the slides. Yep. Okay, so the activities as they are written in the request document include that the project essentially needs to be grounded in and start from a place of what we already know, which is relevant research as well as relevant practice that we know is probably already existing in organisations, and particularly in Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. We see that a key part of this work is about stakeholder engagement. So we recognise that some of these practices will already exist, that there's a wealth of knowledge that would be available to us to draw on, and that that stakeholder engagement, both to form, I suppose, the concept, the process, to think about the tool and what it will do, and think about how we support people to use that tool, will be key to its kind of final formulation. One of the activities talks about testing the tool with practitioners. So I guess what we're indicating is that there should be a process of piloting, if you like, where a tool or a product is developed, and that there's an opportunity for people to use that in real time and with victim survivors in their practice to give us kind of a feedback loop on how it worked for them and how it worked for the victim survivor. And then the final activity is really about providing that final product and keeping communication with stakeholders that have been engaged through the project. The other thing that I will say, which I have already made comment to, is that we would expect that this project, that there is some collaboration and communication with the other one, which is around the mainstream framework. So the deliverables that we are wanting in this project very closely reflect the activities that we've proposed, which first of all includes a project plan about how the work will occur. And that's really about recognising that we want an opportunity to collaborate in the beginning about what this will look like and how it should proceed. So we're probably not coming at this with really strong fixed views about how the stakeholder engagement should occur, where people should look in terms of generating understandings about existing evidence and practice. We think that it will be important that that's something that we do together, and that there might be other key informers in that space that we want to bring around the table. The other deliverables for the project, sort of as we're getting through the project, is a report summarising key findings of evidence, and I use the term evidence in a reasonably informal sense, that is informing the thinking about the tool itself and the practice guidance to be generated. The third deliverable is essentially related to that pilot process. And I did want to make comment that we have used the term validation here, but we're not proposing that this is developing a psychometric tool. So validate is really being used in the context of giving people and practitioners an opportunity to use and feedback. It's not about creating a tool that's got an inbuilt rigor around scoring or reliability, if that makes sense. And then the final deliverable is the completed tool and the associated practice guidance. So really, I guess I hope that you can see that the deliverables in this project are reasonably related to the activities. We're not trying to create a burden around reporting. We're just trying to create a logical sequence to getting to the final product. Sorry. So I'm going to pause there and hand over to Simon, who's going to talk to us about the procurement process itself, and then we'll be very happy to take questions and comments after that.
Thanks, Nicole, and hello, everyone. Just to let you know that you would most likely be aware of this, that all respondents must be registered on Tenders WA. That's to ensure that you get any updates should there be addendum to the request, and it's also required as part of your submission to your response to the tender. Aside from registering on Tenders WA, you would be aware that the response requires a pre-qualification requirement that respondents are either an Aboriginal community controlled organisation and or an Aboriginal registered business. And the respondents are required to answer all of Part B, that's content requirement and respondents offer. And that particular criteria, there's two criteria in that, and I'm just trying to bring it up on my screen just for a moment. It's the suitability of proposed services, and the specified personnel both have equal rating of 50% each. Just want to point out to people that in your response that you don't exceed 5 pages in length to each of those criteria. And just to remind everyone that the tender closes on the 17th of July at 2:30 p.m. If you have any queries or questions, I would please ask that you get them in well before the 17th of July so that we can post out an addendum to everyone in time for them to take that into account when they put in their submission. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Simon. And perhaps just offering my an additional comment, which is that the tenders WA system is managed by a different agency, and there's no flexibility about having submissions come in after that 2:30 p.m. deadline. So it is very important that they come in before 2:30. And in fact, it's probably important that you're submitting them, giving yourself a reasonable buffer just in case there are any IT glitches or internet issues. I just, hate for anyone to miss out because of a technology issue. So just kind of offering that piece of additional information. So they are, I guess, the key information areas that we wanted to share with you today in respect of this request. Simon's mentioned that we've included a page limit on the responses, and that's really, I guess, about, just providing a bit of context around what the level of expectation is about the detail to the response. So it's intended to be of use to you. I hope that it is. We don't need a thesis as such. We just really need that overview of how you would propose to undertake the work. But perhaps if I can pause here and take some questions, I'll look on the chat as well as just happy for people to jump in and ask.
Hi, Nicole, me again. You mentioned that it would be working alongside the CRAMP tender as well. I'm assuming they're going to be running for the same time period?
Yes, and actually, Ali, they'll probably run for a slightly shorter time period. So that's a great point. So we know that the Common Risk Assessment and Risk Management Framework, in a lot of ways, has dependencies for other pieces of work. So we'll be asking them to get their work progressed in a slightly shorter time frame than you, so you can see where they're headed to inform what you're doing. And it's not to say that they need to be the same. I think they're just important context for each other.
Yeah. I'm just wondering about that early collaboration, that those timelines would sync up.
Absolutely. And they will be. So this request is open for a slightly longer period of time than the Common Risk Assessment request, but I think a lot of those initiating conversations we would be looking to facilitate in the same timeline and provide that opportunity for everyone to be around the table together so that we can really facilitate that kind of joined up approach where that's relevant. And really, I suppose, recognising that some of the stakeholders between the two are going to be the same. So how we can kind of manage and lessen the impact on stakeholders is going to be important as well.
Right.
So perhaps what I might do then, in absence of any further questions, is I'll just start that process of closing out this briefing. But what I will offer, and as Simon has already indicated, it doesn't mean that you can't ask further questions. Please, as you, I guess, start thinking about your response and you're thinking about the request and what we've put out in it, if you have any further questions or you'd like information clarified, please don't hesitate to contact us. And I presume, Simon, is that through, what's the most appropriate way to do that? Oh, you're on mute, Simon, sorry. Simon, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that. It's the request document specifies contact details, which is my email address, simon.doyle@communities.wa.gov.au. So if you have any queries, please send it to me, and on the basis of the query, it may require an addendum out to all, but if it's something that's a little bit more routine, I'll respond directly to that particular respondent. So yes, please, by all means, send in any queries that you have.
Thank you, Simon. That's great. So yeah, don't feel like this is the last opportunity to ask a question. There is a process inbuilt, and I guess the main issue for us from a probity point of view is to make sure that everybody has access to the same information to inform their responses, and that's just what we'll be managing on the back end. I guess with all of that said, I just wanted to say thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for taking an interest in the request. We look forward to receiving and reading the responses. And in between time, please don't hesitate to get in touch via Simon with any questions that you have. But thank you again for your time today.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.